Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chia and today I'm bringing you a wrap up. I know that I didn't do one for September, so this is going to be a combination of September and October altogether. So it might be a little bit of a long one, just preparing you that for now, but let's get started. My reading the last 2 months has been very sporadic. I've had some busy moments, especially around this time of year. I start getting busy with birthdays, I start getting busy with like hanging out with a lot of people that I care about. It's hard for me to squeeze reading in here and there because I do want to spend time with the people I love. I also joined a few book clubs as well on Instagram. In this book club, we decided to read one spooky book a week in October, and the admin of this group gave us the option to either opt in or opt out, and I decided to opt in for 3 out of 4 of them. I wanted to do 4 out of 4, but I did DNF one of them. More on that later. I will go in order from September to October. In September, I read about 9 books, but the first book that I read in the month of September is called The Darkness of Light by Stacey Marie Brown. Stacey Marie Brown is known for her Savage Land series. It's talked about a lot on TikTok. I think it's a little bit of an underrated series as well because I don't see it talked about as much as other books that I've seen. But I wanted to read Savage Land series based on a recommendation that I heard from Mariana Reads on TikTok. The more I looked into it, I saw it was a part of an interconnected series, kind of. Let's say it's a few books that are set in the same universe. I started looking more into it and I realized there was 2 other series in this universe. Stacey Marie Brown has stated that you don't have to read the other 2 series in order to read Savage Lands, but knowing me, I like to read other books in the series before I read the last one, because she has stated that yes, you do not need to read the other books in her series in order to read Savage Land, but there are some characters who appear in Savage Lands from those other 2 series. And I do like seeing the connections about those characters, and I like the nostalgia factor of them coming in and feeling a connection to them. The first book follows a girl named Ember. Ember moves from California to Washington because unfortunately she was expelled at her previous school. Her stepfather ended up getting a job in Washington, so they transferred over there. So unfortunately she gets into some trouble with her other school because of things that are out of her control. So they come up with a solution that she should do some hours of community service and also attend a school that is meant for delinquents. And she starts attending it and meets some few friends and falls for one of the students over there. In all honesty, I gave this book a 3 stars. It was published around 2013, maybe a few years after the whole entire Twilight craze started happening. There's a lot of back and forth between the 2 main characters that I just didn't like. I just saw that the whole entire interpretation of, oh, I like you, but stay away from me, but at the same time, I can't stay away from you. This book just gave it 3 stars for me. I just didn't feel connected to the characters. I just didn't think it was a well fleshed out world, but I did like the ending and I do want to continue with the series because there's 4 other books in the series, I think. Oh, by the way, if you see piles of books in my background, no you didn't. That's just the issue I'm trying to deal with right now. But the next book I read in the month of September was Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. In this book, we follow a girl named Bryn. She lives in a city called Alaha, and Alaha people live on the water, and she is a part of the Alaha Guard. She's in love with the commander's son and has sort of like a relationship with him. She and her guard are able to travel on a ship in order to be able to go and visit this market. But unfortunately, an incident happens where they run into a few soldiers that they get into a conflict with and they have to flee for their lives. Unfortunately, one of these soldiers ends up following Bryn back to Alaha and gets imprisoned. And Bryn ends up going to the prison to interact with the soldier, and he tells her that he knows about her past. And she has no family on Alaha, so she decides to go on a journey with him to find out more about her past. I loved it. I gave this book 4.25 stars. I thought it was great. The ending got me. I can't wait till the second book comes out. Rachel Schneider is a great author, and I think this is, I believe, her debut novel. There is no release date in sight for the second book or how many books will be in the series. I believe she stated that she's in the middle of writing it right now, but I highly recommend if you want something different, and I really like this book. Highly recommend. The next book I read in the month of September was A Court This Cruel and Lovely by Stasia Stark. We follow a girl named Priska, and Priska lives in a small town where when they are born, their magical gifts are taken away from them. On their 25th birthday, they are allowed to get their powers back. But before they are allowed to get their powers back, they are tested first to see if they have any hidden power or remaining power. Even if they weren't aware of their hidden power, they are imprisoned in the dungeon and their family is executed right in front of them. So it's a harsh world, and so Priska, of course, has a hidden power that she doesn't want anyone to discover. Unfortunately, an incident where her hidden power is discovered, she ends up having to run away. And while she's running away, she runs into 4 mercenaries, and one of them is named Lorien. And she joins these mercenaries to go on an adventure in order to find out more about the corruption of their kingdom. It's a full-on adventure. I gave this book a 4.25 again. I did like it, it's just that it's not something new that you've ever read before. It's similar to a lot of other fantasy romantasy books out there, but at the end of the book, the cliffhanger does lead up to them branching off to a different story, and then it gets its footing at the end, which I really like. And the tension and the banter between Lorien and Priska are great. There are some spicy scenes in this book. It's just that I felt like the spicy scenes kind of happened too soon, and I wanted more of their relationship develop. I will continue on with the series. The next book I read in the month of September was the Book of Azrael by Amber V. Nicole. This book follows a girl named Diana Martinez. She is an Igmorthan, and Igmorthan are shapeshifters. In order for her sister to live, she strikes a bargain with Caden, and Caden turns her into an Igmorthan, but the catch is she has to do his bidding. Igmorthans are kind of evil, and they are shapeshifters, and they can turn into whatever creature they want. And there's a man named Samuel, or Liam. Liam is sort of a celestial being. In this world, Samuel is known as the World Ender. And unfortunately, different circumstances happen in his previous world, end up getting destroyed and exploded, and he blames himself for what happens. And he's one of those characters who are good, but he's broody. He's a woe is me kind of person, and he wants to just stay away from everyone because he just doesn't feel that he deserves to be surrounded by anyone else. And he ends up running into Diana because Diana chooses to do something that goes against Caden, and she ends up joining forces with Samuel. I gave this book a 4.5. I love how dark and gritty it is. I love how usually it's male main character who's morally gray, but in this book it's a female main character who's morally gray. I love Diana. I love self-sufficient she is, how smart she is. She's an older character compared to the younger characters that I'm used to for fantasy books, she's not this 18-19-year-old who is insecure, unsure about herself. She still has her insecure moments, but she's confident, she's strong, and she's knows who she loves and what she has to do in order to protect the people that she loves. So I will continue on with the series. There are 3 books out right now. I believe it will be a 7-book series, and I believe the 4th book is coming out in May of 2025. The next book I read in the month of September was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This book has been on my TBR for the longest time. Ever since I started going back into reading, I started seeing that it was recommended to me, that I heard that it was a good thriller, and then the ending was really twisted. We follow a character who is a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and he ends up following this case where this woman who is an artist, and she ends up killing her husband. He just wants to uncover why she did it, and some part of him believes that she wasn't fully at her right mind when she did it and wants to know why that pushed her to finally end up murdering her husband, or if she murdered him at all. And then the twist at the end was great. I honestly thought that the twist at the end was really good, but it got kind of boring in the middle of it. I gave this book a 4.25 because of the ending and the twist, and I felt like it was a fast read. I like thrillers as palate cleansers because it gives me a chance to kind of decompress from the fantasies that I read a lot, because as you know, that's my favorite genre of all time. I highly recommend picking up, especially right now. It's 'tis the season for it, so might as well. The next book I read in the month of September was A Touch of Golden Madness by K.L. Devoured. I believe this is her debut novel. This follows a girl named Grey. She is the princess of the Kinetic Kingdom, and there is a conflict between the Kinetics and the Elementals. Kinetics rely on replenishing their powers through people's auras. They rely on energy. They have different powers that are connected to either microwaves, kinetic waves, UV rays. I love the different magic that it was exploring in this book. And then there's a character named Griffin, and Griffin is a part of the Elementals, elementals. He's sort of the heir apparent, and Princess Grey is tasked to go. She's basically like the assassin for the king, which is her father. He tells her that she has to go and assassinate Griffin. She runs into Griffin and ends up deciding that she can't kill him, and she ends up going back to her kingdom. In the Kinetic Kingdom, she ends up uncovering a plan that someone is trying to assassinate her. So during this assassination attempt, she ends up running away. A few friends help her escape, and on her way she runs into Griffin, and Griffin offers her help on how to get away from the Kinetic and keep her safe. So she ends up joining him, and the chemistry is really good. The twist at the end, but this book is so twisty. This book has so many plot twists, it gives you so much whiplash. This book I gave 4.5 stars to. There's nothing that I could say that was really wrong with it. It's just that I just didn't feel the 5-star feeling from it. I believe there is a prequel coming out in December for this book, and I can't wait to see it because it will talk about our characters before they ended up in A Touch of Golden Madness. But Cale Devoured has said do not read the prequel unless you've read A Touch of Golden Madness, because a lot of things will be spoiled. And I am so grateful because I was able to get an arc for the prequel, and I can't wait to read it. I'm thinking of reading it in one of these vlogs soon, so hopefully I can get to it soon. So if you want something that will keep your interest, I highly recommend it, and there is spice in this book as well. The next 2 books I read in the month of September was 2 books that I gave 5 stars to, and that of course is Reign of Shadows and Ending and Storms of Secrets and Sorrows by Melissa K. Rourke. These 2 books are part of the Legacy series. Melissa K. Rourke also writes the Lady of Darkness series, and this one is sort of like a spin-off, but it's set in a different world in this universe. In this world, we are in a place called Devrim. There are beings who are fays and legacies. We follow a girl named Tessa, and Tessa is a fae. She is living on an estate where a lot of other fays are trained to become sources for legacies. And sources for legacies are basically fays they can fill up their powers from. Legacies, they have to take on a source in order to replenish their powers. And this world is very dark. It's very dark. It's one of those books where like you don't know who to root for because everyone is morally gray. It's a character-based book. It's more character-based than plot-based, but I absolutely love this world that I gave both of these books a 5 stars. Melissa K. Rourke knows how to write in-depth characters that has so many levels to their characters. They have so many layers that you can't completely decide whether they are good or bad, and you don't know who to root for, like I said before. Tessa is unwillingly chosen as a source for our character who is the legacy named Theon. Theon is drawn to her right away. She never wanted to be a source. A source is a very vulnerable thing to become. They have to give up their whole entire will, freedom, everything, because they have to go live on the estate with the legacy, and the legacy tells them what to do, how to be. In these estates, these fays are taught to be meek, they're taught to be serving, they're taught to be obedient. I love this book because it explores so many in-depth things about how troublesome their society is. And we also have a character named Luca who is a dragon shifter. This is by far my favorite series this year. I don't know, I can't even explain it in the words how much this book has affected me. It is so eventful, you're never bored because every single chapter there's something happening. You find chemistry between all the characters. Tessa fights against a source bond left and right. She's very disobedient to Theon. She's very reckless, and sometimes I get frustrated with the things that she's done because she's not going about it as smart and she doesn't necessarily think through her actions, but I can't help but root for her. Theon does a lot of questionable things to Tessa that really made my blood boil, but right now I can't help but root for him. I just want everyone to be happy, and this is going to be a 4-book series. The 3rd book just came out on October 31st. It's a part of my October wrap-up, and there's 1 more book slated to come out next year. This is definitely a 5-star series for me, and it's my mission to have everyone read this series. And the last book I read in the month of September was A Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. This book is the 2nd book in the Last Hour series. I talked so much about this series in my videos, in my TikToks, because I love this series so much. Cassandra Clare has this world fleshed out so well because she's written multiple series in the Shadowhunter universe. If you don't know, the Shadowhunters are demon hunters. They are descended from angels, and they have powers that were gifted by angels in order to be able to extinguish demons from their world. In this series, I don't recommend reading this until you read the Infernal Devices series. It's a trilogy that is set before this one, and I absolutely love that it's set in London. I love the way these characters speak because it's very formal how they speak to each other. I love that this world is so fleshed out. I can't wait to get to the last book. The love stories are always painful in Cassandra Clare books. And this one, some of these are the descendants of characters from the Infernal Devices book. That's why I said don't read this until the Infernal Devices books are read, because everything will get spoiled. But I'm so sad that I'm gonna leave this world soon. And I'm putting off reading the last book until maybe the end of this year because I don't want to say goodbye. I'm gonna miss this series so much.
You're still holding on! Let go!
Of course, this was a 5 stars for me, and I can't wait to get to the next one. Okay, now let's move on to October. October, like I said, was filled with book club books. I did end up joining a book club that we had a bunch of thrillers and horror books on our list. I read 3 of the books of the 4 that we chose, and I'll get into the 4th one on why I didn't end up reading that. The first book I read in the month of October is A Kingdom This Cursed and Empty by Stasia Stark. This is the second book in the Kingdom of Light series, and it's right after A Court This Cruel and Lovely. And this follows Priska and the adventure that she goes on after the events of the last book. She finds out more about her world that they are dealing with to help out, and she finds out more about her past, and she might have not been told the complete story by her family, so she goes off into a adventure where she tries to go find her past and ends up running into a lot of people who come from the past. I thought it was better than the first one. I love the found family in this, and I haven't moved on to the 3rd book yet, but I want to eventually, maybe in the next couple months or so. But yeah, 4.5 stars. The next book I read in the month October is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. This book follows a family of kind of bad characters who are just dealing with things in a way that their situation is based on. After the events of the first chapter, it's also in the synopsis of the book, so this is not a spoiler, but we follow a girl named Libby. She is dealing with the effects of something that happened to her as a kid. Unfortunately, someone came into the house and murdered not only her mom but also her 2 little sisters, and everything was put on the blame of her older brother Ben. Ben is in jail for the killings of her family, but after she starts running out of money because she was sort of given a GoFundMe when she was a kid because she was the only one who survived in her family. The book goes back and forth on flashbacks on different stuff that happens in the one day that right before her family gets murdered. I gave it a 3.5 stars. I saw a lot of the dark things that happened coming from a mile away. There was a bunch of guesses that I was going through. They come from a very small town. I was very curious to see what actually happened during the night that her family was murdered, and I just didn't like it. She is blaming her trauma for all the things that she can't do, but she doesn't do anything to help her overcome it, and I just thought the ending was not for me, and this book was definitely not for me. I gave it a 3. I was gonna give it 2 stars, but 3.5 stars because it kept me entertained for the longest time, and I did want to find out what happened. And the next book I read was Keep It in the Family by John Mars, and this one was another dark book. This follows a couple who ends up moving into a Victorian house. They end up having to renovate a lot of things in this house because it's old, and the female main character and her husband have been living in their mother-in-law's house, and she doesn't necessarily get along with her mother-in-law. During one of these renovations, they discover something in the attic, and this attic is filled with a lot of terrible things. Their house ends up becoming a sort of like investigation area. Wow, the stuff, the twists, and that's all I'm gonna say. My jaw was on the floor. Would not highly recommend this to anybody unless you don't mind a lot of dark things happening. They involve a lot of dark things that happen with children. I can't necessarily say that I really like this book. I gave it a 4 stars just because of how twisted the story was and how it kept me entertained. Yeah. The next book I read in the month of October was Worthy of Fate by Anne Cottle. This follows a girl named Kaya, and Kaya is marked by the gods. And she is a fae. Not every single fae is marked by the gods. It's random. When their mark glows or their mark alters, they have to respond to it. That's how they are told that they have to attend these trials. It's a fated, forbidden mate romance. I really like the chemistry in this book, but the trials are only 25% of the book. The male main character's name is Riker. Riker is a lord of one of these nations, but once the trials are completed, the fated mate trope starts because the fated mate bond clicks into place and he realizes it's Kaya. And also the rules of their world, they are forbidden to be together. But they agree that she should come along with him to get to know him, to see what this is, and also to find out more about the task that she was given by the god that chose her. And of course the banter was great. The ending was a cliffhanger at best. This was a 4.25 stars. I couldn't necessarily give it a 5 stars because the middle did end up getting a little bit slow and some unnecessary stuff kind of like happened. I would think that it would be insta-lovey because they're fated mates. I like the slow burn. I like the fact that they got to know each other before any spice happened, and the ending was great. And the second book is coming out in December. I did get the arc and I can't wait to read that one as well because I'm excited to see what happens to the characters. Well, the next book I technically read in the month of October was The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchinson. This book is the third book that we were reading in our book club. Unfortunately, I had to DNF it because it does follow very, very dark themes. That was just too triggering for me. We follow a girl who unfortunately is kidnapped. She is along for the ride for a person who collects girls and kidnaps them to be a part of his butterfly garden. And I got through maybe a few chapters of this book, maybe almost 100 pages, and I couldn't do it. I had to put it down. It was affecting me mentally. Yeah, I had to DNF because it just wasn't for me, so that was my only DNF of the month. And then the second to last book that I read in the month of October was Pen Pal by Dathan Arbach. I gave this book a 2 stars. We follow an unnamed character who's a kid. It basically goes around to different flashback memories that he has, and this book is a series of Reddit creepypastas that were put together into a book, and I wouldn't recommend it. It jumps around so much, and when you start the book, it literally feels like you just got dropped into the middle of the story and you're missing so many stories. But it goes on to reveal those stories throughout the chapters. I feel like the whole entire ending of each chapter was very creepy, but it just took way too long to get to it. I just didn't like how the story was going, the way it was structured, and I would not recommend you buying it either. I wish that I knew that it was a bunch of Reddit posts before I ended up buying the book. Thankfully, it was only like a few dollars, but still. Last book I read in the month of October was Hollow Heathens by Nicole Fiorina. This book is a part of an interconnected standalone that will follow different couples every single book in this sort of series. But this one follows a character named Fallon. Fallon has been in communication with her grandfather, who lives in a town called Weeping Hollow. If you grew up watching Halloween Town, Sleepy Hollow, Hocus Pocus, that kind of town. When you come into this town, there's not really connection to the outside world. Your cell phone stopped working. There's not really working places with internet. She ends up going to this town because she gets a concerning letter from her grandfather, and her grandfather's health is deteriorating, and so she wants to go and spend time with him. They are all each other has left. She is stuck until Weeping Hollow lets you leave. And the Hollow Heathens in town are cursed. They have to wear a mask, otherwise the people they run into will die. She ends up getting to know one of these Hollow Heathens, and his name is Julian Blackwell. She ends up being told by a lot of the town members that she has to stay away from the Hollow Heathens, but of course she ends up falling for Julian. I gave this a 4 stars. I love the vibes of this, and I thought it kind of just dragged on a little bit, and then also the ending kind of wrapped up really fast, and because of that, that's the reason why I gave it a 4 stars. And then the last book that I read in the month of October was The Arc for Tempest of Wrath and Vengeance by Melissa K. Rourke. This was one of my highly anticipated reads of the year, and when I found out that she was offering arcs for it, of course I signed up right away and got accepted, and I'm so excited that I'm a part of her art team. I got sent the ARC earlier this month, and I of course gave this book a 5 stars. I think it's my favorite one out of the 3 now because of how the characters evolved and how they grew. Of course, the characters are put through it. They are put through a lot of situations that are unfortunately that they need to go through because they need to grow as characters, and of course they went through a lot of growth and character development, and there were relationships that were developed in this book that left me really giddy. A lot of the happiness is tinted by darkness because Tessa is going through a lot of things right now and trying to figure out her world because she spent all of her life getting used and abused by every single person, and for her to figure out who to trust in a world full of villains, and the people who say that they care for her are trying to prove that to her as well, because obviously she went through it and it's not going to be that easy for her to change up her mindset. But that's the beauty of this book. There's a lot of morally gray characters. Theon grew as well, so did Luca, and all of them grew, and I'm so proud of them. And the ending of this book makes me so scared for the last book. The last book will come out sometime next year, and I don't know how she's gonna wrap up all their stories because I've been so invested in their characters for a while. I love the side characters also. Like, there's no boring chapter in this book. And if you haven't picked up the Legacy series yet, put this on your TBR because it will be worth it. Anyways, thank you for sitting through this. I know it's kind of long because it is my September and October wrap up, and I'm trying not to combine things like that again because again it comes down to long videos and sometimes I don't want to sit here and film long videos. If you read any of these books, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!